just absolutely thrilled to be here. Thanks to PancakesCon, an amazing staff, folks that are running around in the background doing so many things, and just to be able to follow Matt, um, really outstanding. That last bit that Matt got into about life on the trail really kind of hit me, and it ties in a lot to how I feel about what we're going to be talking about. So I want to talk about today with you a little bit of a survival guide for both life in the pit, getting into hardcore show, getting into a punk show, out at a festival or in a venue, and what those experiences hopefully can teach you about working, living, making your living in information security. So a little bit of background. First off, before before we even start, let me just say and caveat this. Common sense is key here. Absolutely, positively, I'm going to give you some lessons that I've learned, some perspectives from me, but please, absolutely always in both your professional career and if you decide to dive into the pit, use your common sense. I'm going to hopefully give you some additional common sense, but please don't go getting yourself hurt. So, because there's that. Before you even start to listen to me, let me tell you a little bit about myself. First off, information security wise, I have led teams for, let's see, I've done IT and cyber information security, whatever we want to call it this week, for a little over 20 years. I've done everything with a plug consulting. I've done network detection response, incident response, forensics. I've muddled around in the dark arts of customer success, which is where I find myself now. And my happiest spot in there is I get to lead and build teams and develop talent and develop people and help them on their careers. So as Jennifer was saying, I am super passionate about bringing people into the pursuit of pushing back against evil, and especially folks that don't always have a shot. Probably more importantly and pertinent to this, I grew up in New Jersey, so take that for what you will. I know some of you are already having a mental picture of New Jersey. One of the great things about growing up in New Jersey was we were not far from New York, not far from Philly. New York had a pretty vibrant music scene, so did Philly. New Jersey had an amazing music scene when I was growing up. And one of the interesting things was I wasn't allowed to listen to rock music when I was growing up. My dad literally had redlined parts of the radio that I was not allowed to listen to. So I got saved by a radio station out of Princeton called WPRB that played classical and opera during the day and then switched over to punk at night. So technically wasn't breaking the laws. I've probably done, thinking about, expertise and where you've spent your time and all of that. I have probably done well over 10,000 hours at shows and pits, both as someone attending and working. One of the really cool things, a friend of mine at one point gave me the opportunity to make a living work in security in some of these venues, which was really outstanding. So I have spent a lot of time. I can't even begin to tell you the number of shows that I've been to, or the number of bands that I've seen. But I'm going to caveat that by this. And feel free to throw this in chat, trying to pay attention to chat. Anybody ever have someone, you're wearing a band t-shirt, you're wearing a t-shirt for something, and somebody walks up and goes, "Hey, name 2 songs by that band if you're really a fan." I hear this all the time. It was kind of funny. I was talking to somebody at a conference in New York a while back, and woman, also cybersecurity professional, gets tired of getting kind of that feedback. I will tell you honestly, there are bands that I have seen a dozen times. I couldn't pick the band out of a lineup. there are bands I've seen a dozen times that I couldn't tell you the song title for any of their songs, but I've definitely been down in the mud and enjoying those shows. So, um, expertise wise, I struggle with imposter syndrome, and I think that's the first tie-in for me. Here is there's imposter syndrome everywhere. What is lead enough? What is punk enough? I've had folks that will say, hey, if you listen to anything but hardcore, you're not punk. Or if you listen to metal, you're not punk. Well, I listen to all sorts of stuff, and I try to. Same kind of thing. So there's our first caution. Um, Moving on. So one of the neat things for me was my journey in all things computers ran simultaneously to this punk journey for me. A lot of the same people that I got my first wares from and my first floppies that had interesting things on them were folks that I met at shows and down in the pit. So the two are inexorably tied to me. And as we got into the pit, um, it allowed me as a young kid, and even as I got older, to define myself, to understand who I was and how to build. And that's the other part. That's, looking at a couple of the talks today, talking about, kind of finding your way and finding your community, like Matt was talking about, that camaraderie, that finding your people. I found my people in many of these pits, both working there and living there. And to me, that culture that builds up around it informs a lot of how I see the world. So that was part of what got me started thinking on this talk was, I have nothing but warm feelings for that. Now, I will caveat that by saying, and we'll get into some of this, it's dependent on a few factors, but we'll get there. So thinking about, and one of the things that I thought was really fascinating was the ethos, the punk ethos and the hacker ethos, if you will, very similar. A lot of it's defined by what we're against, what we're anti-conformist, anti-authoritarian, anti-corporate, anti-selling out. So that immediately starts off kind of an interesting spot. And just the way that we take things that were meant to be safe and turn them on their head to turn them into weapons or turn them into expression. The other part really kind of jumps out at me is the rules that get posted by people outside of the community or on the fringe of the communities that we're part of are oftentimes scoffed at. We kind of exclude them. The rules that we follow aren't necessarily always the ones that are posted around. And there's some interesting challenges there. And this is not to say, and I am certainly just very clearly, this is not to say that things like codes of conduct are not essential. As things get more complex and as the stakes go up, we need to have more defined ways that we interact and ways of protecting everybody in the community. So, no slam dancing, no stage diving. My favorite used to be at a club that I used to go to and then worked at was no whips, no chains, no implements of death. So tried like crazy to find that sign and couldn't find it. But a lot of times the culture itself, and especially in the pit, develops organically by the people that are participating in that culture. And some of the rules that they're the day-to-day rules really jump out at me. It's fascinating because even given the anarchist mindset, the anti-establishment mindset, the non-conformity mindset, you look at something as simple as a wall of stickers. And fascinated. Saw it at a conference last summer. Massive wall of stickers was I don't know how long, but 10,000 stickers on it. And hardly anybody covered up other stickers with their sticker. Never mind the fact that we do kind of the same sticker identify, make our mark, etc. So thinking about how that culture organically grows really kind of started pulling things together for me. And the fact that yeah, there are rules and there are rules, and which ones do you need to follow? What's really fascinating to me about the pit, but jumping ahead, the pit is this is an event within a culture. Pits come and go. You can be at a festival where you'll be potentially part of many different pits, and each of them will have slightly different dynamics. And it just kind of grows. There is no defined spot for a pit. It was really interesting as I was kind of diving in and looking for materials to explain this. Found a diagram of this is where things are for a pit, and it was just like the diagram was honestly was wrong, but the structure, the general structure was right. So as I'll walk you through kind of what to expect, because some of you have been, some of you haven't been. Want to give you an idea of what the experience is like. But really, and again, here's the next tie-in, if you will. So much of how to thrive in this kind of environment comes down to your ability to observe, your ability to look, your ability to kind of get in, take and analyze information, sort things out as you go dynamically, because it's constantly changing, and then communicate. Look for communication coming in, look for communication coming out. So the one image that I've got up here, the guy holding up the pit sign. This is a guy I honestly I don't know his name. I've met him multiple shows. You can't see it on his t-shirt, but it says Pit Medic. I know he's an EMT. I know he lives out in Ohio somewhere. We've been at a bunch of the same kind of shows. One of the things that he does is when the pit starts, he unfurls this sign just so if you're looking, you go, oh, that's where I need to go. If you're out in the crowd, you don't always know where the pit's going to be. You don't know where the pit is, and sometimes there are more than one. So it's helpful in a nice big flat field to be able to get there. So for those of you that haven't been to a show, and I'd love to hear like who's been to shows and what your favorite was, etc. But typically there's a stage somewhere where the band is playing. It's kind of, I've been at a few events where there's a pit with no band. That's a little odd, but typically there's a stage and there's a band. This outdoor festivals or small venues, restaurant, bars, etc. There's a stage. Sometimes there's a little bit of space, and then there's what we call a barricade. That barricade kind of separates you from the stage. Typically, there are folks in that barricade space. Folks work in security. This doesn't happen everywhere. Depends on the structure. Those folks are there to hopefully keep you safe, and in some cases stop you from getting on stage, etc. Ideally, that role is there to facilitate you having a good time and being safe and help you when things go sideways. So there are folks there. There's a barricade. Barricades are great, by the way, for launching yourself off of if you want. And typically with folks that are either crowd surfing or they want to get out because there's a little bit of a press, guys behind the wall and the barricade will pick you out and send you back in, and you'll get to go back out. After that barricade, there's typically a press of people that are there that want to see the band, that are there, that their eyes are forward, and that's what they're paying attention to, and that's great. And then somewhere behind that, typically evolves a pit. The whole purpose of the pit is this is a space to dance. This is a space, community space where you just go and ideally have a little bit of fun. These pits can open up at a bunch of different places. Sometimes they open and fold into each other. Sometimes, sometimes you'll end up with staggered pits, or you'll end up with smaller pits of folks hanging out together. If that sounds absolutely horrendous and scary, really the first question is, hey, is this chaos or is this home to you? Is this something that you're going to enjoy and you're going to appreciate. And I'll tell you, it can be a little scary. I'm going to give you some hints for kind of observing a little closer and maybe making a decision as to whether you want to jump in. The first thing, really, that we got to do is decide, hey, go, no go. Do I want to get into the pit? Do I want to get into this space? Do I want to have this experience? Or, am I good up in the press? Am I good sitting up in a chair at VIP or something, or sitting further back? And all of that is absolutely cool. I will tell you that I've found a lot of fun and a lot of amazing people in the pit, but I know that it's not for everybody. And one of the things, and Jennifer had mentioned, I will say I've had the privilege, of being a large human being. So, and I know sometimes you're going to say, well, okay, that's why you feel comfortable in the pit. I'll tell you that some of the things I've learned is in the pit, there's always somebody bigger. Size is not always your friend. That working security, size is not always your friend. And again, size isn't always the deciding factor. So moving on, and we'll talk a little more about privilege in a bit. The other thing that strikes me thinking about freedom of choice is, as you're starting out your career, very much the same as you're starting a career in information security. So many options. Are you going to go blue team, red team? Do you want to do forensics? Do you want to do IT, OT? What do you want to get into? So how do you make those choices if you don't have any information, if you don't know where you're going? If you haven't done it before, if you don't have the experience, how do you start making those decisions? And I'll tell you, the key that I found is look for people that you can follow. Doing things like coming to a con like this, absolutely essential. Find people, get to understand not only what their background is, but understand for yourself. The other thing that I'll point out is one of the byproducts of one of the things that happens in the industry sometimes, gatekeeping, is it shuts doors for folks that have skills that want to turn them and professionalize them and make a career out of it. And one of the things that happens when they get frustrated and they can't necessarily break in and get a job is they get forced to potentially make a living doing bad things with bad people. That same frustration that you'll see at a show where people are kind of locked out or they're not allowed to get into the spaces where they want to go, that can boil over and create a problem. So something to think about there as to those decisions. Are you going to be good or are you going to be a threat actor? I think if we continue to gatekeep and we keep people out, the natural thing is they're going to use those skills and do bad things that are going to make our lives more difficult. So one point here, how do you get to the pit? You're in this huge crowd. The pit's up there. You can see it. Follow people. You're going to see folks worming their way through the crowd a little bit. In most cases, one of the things I've found is when people figure you're crazy enough that you're going to the pit, they will clear away because they know you're not going to just end up standing in front of them. You'll find a way. You can crowd surf your way up. That's a whole different trip. Again, I don't crowd surf myself anymore because I think it's unfair to the people that are holding you up, but it's another way to go. But as you see people in these serpentine worming motions moving up, chances are that's where they're heading, and that's a good way to get to the pit. So I will tell you that, if my slides will advance, that chaos in the pit does happen. That if you don't have your wits about you, it will eat you for lunch. You going to hopefully give you some good survival skills, but it is physical, it is jostling, it is bodies against bodies. Whether you're in the pit itself or around it, typically you'll hear folks that'll talk about, hey, there's a wall and there are people that hang there and you have jobs, and there are people that are in the pit, and there are different kinds of pits. There are circle pits, there are push pits. Really, the whole thing is just bodies against bodies and basically back to basic physics. Once you get things moving around, they're going to bang into each other and they're going to be effects. So Sorry, trouble with my PowerPoint. So being prepared is essential. One of the things that I think is important as you're going, not only mental preparation, we'll talk about that in a second, but there are a couple of things, because it is a physical space and you can get kind of banged around. There are a couple of things that I make sure that I bring with me anymore. You may think these are overkill. Again, this is whether I'm working or whether I'm just diving into the pit. I tape my fingers just because I always end up jamming a finger. Tape's useful if you lose a shoe, you lose a shoelace, you get banged up. Tape's great for other things. Your pockets, closing your pockets off, taping your phone into your pocket, etc. Earplugs. I always take latex gloves just because, you know, some fluids are icky. So some folks use a mouth guard. I have in the past. I take Band-Aids. I take butterfly closures. These are exceptionally useful if you need them. Always have a bandana. I wear a watch, so it'll cover up my watch, or get it over your face, or if it's a really dusty and dry pit, so you can breathe and get that wet. And I take a plastic water bottle. Why a plastic water bottle? Yes, I know it's not environmentally sound. I use the same one for most of the time because I don't care where it goes, and if I lose it and I can get it past security, and there's most of the time you can refill water somewhere at the venue. The other thing that you might want to think about, festivals and stuff like that, super glue is outstanding. Super glue was developed, my understanding of it, super glue was developed to close off wounds, and it works really well that way. All right, so we're ready to go. Take a moment, breathe, be aware, look around, see what the environment's like. I'll give you one of the big kind of yellow flags for me is if you're at a venue and there's nowhere to get water, probably not ideal. If you're at a venue and you see security being rough and throwing people around before the show even starts, that's going to be a signal. So the things that really impact like what a pit's going to look like, show to show, or even band to band. The venue itself, you want to know where your exits are. You want to know what things you can bang into. There's a venue that we used to go to that had chairs and tables bolted to the floor, like 10 feet off the stage. Bad idea. The band, I'll tell you the difference between I don't want to call it any bands. The difference between some bands that played, should we say, Woodstock the last time around, and other bands will change the entire energy, the crowd, the people that are there, the time of day, and just kind of the vibe and the energy. If you get a bad vibe, if the little hairs in the back of your head stand up, probably stand and watch. So as things get going and the band kicks in, take that moment, move with some intentionality, know what you want to do, know where you want to go, pull yourself in. I will tell you one of the first things is this, consent, as in all places, is key in the pit. You don't pull people in from the wall. You don't push people into the pit. If somebody wants to get out, you let them get out. But you want to be aware. You want to get your momentum going. You want to get in. If you commit and it's a little too crazy and a little too wild, be okay with making mistakes. Be okay that you know, it's like, hey, maybe I overestimated this, or this is a little too much energy for me. One note here, you know, you really have to decide at this point. It's like, hey, am I going to be a jerk, or am I going to go in and treat people with respect and have a good time? I think that applies day to day in information security. We have lots of opportunities to be jerks. We have lots of opportunities to pull people along and lift people up. So that intention. So rise above, be better, dive in, be better. One note here, if you stumble across something, people lose shoes, people lose glasses, people lose phones, all sorts of crazy stuff. What you do is you grab a hold of that, step kind of out, hold it up above your head where people can see it. You don't just take it and chuck it. That's somebody's shoes. And I'll tell you from personal experience, having no shoes in the pit sucks. So don't be a jerk. However, be aware, there are lots of opportunities to be a jerk in the pit. First off, one of the things that kind of gets me is, I'm not going to say zero tolerance for jerk behavior, but we need to call it out. We need to say, hey, this isn't cool. This is not an opportunity. Crowd surfers or other people in the pits, this is not an opportunity for you to impose your will on other human beings. These are not non-player characters. They are not there for your entertainment. This is an opportunity for you to look out for other people. There are sometimes consequences if you choose to be a jerk in the pit. More and more, and I'm encouraged by this, and this comes and goes and has over the years. Somewhat depends on the band sometimes, but bad behavior is tolerated. I've seen bands stop shows to call out people and shame them to leave, which is phenomenal. The amount of harm that can happen ranges anywhere from having somebody having a bad day to somebody having their life altered. That's not this. Nobody should have to have life-altering consequences because they chose to go see a band and dance, which is what essentially it is. You have to understand that folks have rights, and that you don't have a right to impose your will on other folks. We'll get into that a little bit. Thinking about privilege, this is, again, talking about privilege before, this is one of the reasons that I love being in security and not just working the barricade, but working actually in the pit a lot. If you were anywhere, Philly, Jersey, whatever, I worked at Troc, I worked at TLA, so Troc, many shows right down in the pit amongst human beings. And I enjoyed having the privilege of looking out for folks that weren't necessarily able to look out for themselves. The best implementation here, though, is when the community looks out for everybody and then shames the jerk off the stage. Or, I'm sorry, off the floor. So not only are we looking at for jerks, but here's a huge opportunity to grow, to rise above ourselves. One of the things that's heavy, and again, talking about privilege, it's like, again, large human being, you're going to think it's like, hey, the easiest thing to do when somebody is acting up and causing a problem is to physically move them. That doesn't work for everybody, and honestly, it's not where I go to first. There's a philosophy that I like called the 5 Ds. Distract, delegate, delay, document, or direct. Direct being the last. Direct is, I'm going to wrap you up and I'm going to carry you out. Have some links at the end about the 5 Ds, but this is community action. This is bystander intervention. This is one of the things that I love about the pit, and more and more so in our information security community, where folks are looking out for other folks and helping them. Probably the best rule, the largest unwritten rule in the pit is when somebody falls down, you're going to pick them up. So a couple of pieces of reality. One, everybody falls down. Second piece, nothing scarier than being on the ground and nobody helping you up. Proximity is the largest arbiter of responsibility. If somebody falls in front of you, pick them up. So there's a degree of reciprocity there. So if you fall down, like seen it happen in pits before, if you're not picking folks up or you're knocking people down, no one's going to pick you up when it comes their time. So the priority here, and you'll see upper picture, you'll see all these guys, band's still on the stage, pit's still going, everything's moving. Their entire focus is on the person that fell to pick them up. Everything else stops. When somebody falls down, everything stops. Nothing is more important. We build that person back up and lift them. The other point here is in the photo on the left. So is at a festival 2 years ago, and this is a girl pit. You have an opportunity to, again, stand up, rise above, be an ally, be an advocate, create space for other folks, because everybody's got a right to be in the pit. Everybody's got a right to work in cybersecurity. You don't have to be this tall. You don't have to be this smart. You don't have to be conforming to certain preconceived notions for folks. So how do we overcome jerks? There are lots of jerks that are going to say, hey, this pit is mine. The pit, very much like the internet, belongs to everybody and belongs to no one in particular. You will find people, and here's the short rant. You will find people that think the pit belongs exclusively to them. I'm not going to go into the detail, but you'll see NPFO. If you know what it is, if you want me to spell it out for you, you'll also see it in the playlist. There are folks that try to own pits. I've grown up around this. There are folks that come to shows to terrorize people, to abuse people, to create havoc for people. Second part of privilege, again, that direct piece, I will say I've used in the past. The other spot, though, is the appropriate use of privilege. Given a platform like this, given the being someone that can grab a hold of somebody else and spin and clear out space for other folks, you can control and you can open a spot for kids, for folks that maybe aren't as comfortable or can't spread that space for themselves. I see a lot of our mission in information security as taking that privilege. If we've been in the industry for a while, we have experience, you lead teams, you're a hiring person, etc. Use that privilege. That's the appropriate utilization of privilege, not to necessarily raise ourselves up. So wasted is a problem for everybody in the pit. This again translates to me. Decisions have consequences. The pit is not someplace to dive into when you're trashed. You're going to create a problem. You're likely going to, in most cases, ironically, you end up getting somebody else hurt and you're not. But be aware, there's accountability. Lots of times this is community accountability, but make good decisions. Don't go into the pit trashed. Don't at conferences and events, don't think that because you are inebriated or otherwise, that's an excuse for bad behavior. We're all grown-ups, kind of, so get over it. So there are other things that kind of drain. Look, honestly, you're listening to music, there's energy. It can be really positive, and in some cases, it can stir up a lot of things for folks. It can trigger a lot of things, and it can kind of move things. It's easy to see, look, in our day-to-day, we work oftentimes in a lot of high-paced things, a lot of high-pressure pieces, and a lot of emotions run high, and excuse me, and it's easy to lose sight of that. So keep your eyes open for those moments where people are suffering with internal conflict. Be aware that, be aware that folks do have signals when they are in crisis, when their well-being is there. As managers and leaders, it's one of the things that, I'm honestly thankful post-pandemic and going through pandemic that we call out a little more often. We have more tools, but look out for your friends, look out for your colleagues, look out for your coworkers, especially in things where, hey, you're out there and you're interviewing and you're applying and you're trying to find jobs. It can be absolutely soul crushing. I've done it. I think everybody here probably has done it. It can be a real grind, and there are signs there, not always as apparent as the wall of death, but there are signs. Look for them. And when you see somebody hit that wall, when you see somebody starting to burn out, when they've collapsed, when they fall down, okay, again, the priority is stop. Get them help, okay? When you need help, when they need help, everything else stops and you make a sign. What's great about this, one, you can see it, but it also hard to do if you're still moving. This, if you're at a show and you see, that's people calling for help. Typically starts with a couple of people. This lets the folks that are professionally doing security, professionally doing medical attention, to rush over and aid. And again, I'm going to come back down. This can be a great experience if done right. Absent jerks. At the end of shows, you're going to see people, and my experience, and full disclosure, it's sweaty sometimes, it smells bad. Back to Matt's point, the shared experience can be largely positive and wonderful. And I've hugged people and celebrated with people, and just after 40 minutes in a pit for a band with no other commonality. There's a lot of strength there. Those communities form and dissolve and form and dissolve. I love it. I think it's a great opportunity to elevate. We can do this in our professional lives, in information security, in our community as well. So some simple things to thrive in the pit. So again, security is everybody's responsibility. That hopefully will resonate with folks working in the industry. There is no designated pit space, happens everywhere. So pit belongs to everybody. Make room, proximity is responsibility. Consent's not implied at all. Don't be a creep, don't tolerate creeps. When we talk about creeps are not limited to, you'll professionally most likely run into a brilliant jerk, somebody that's hyper intelligent but treats everybody like hell. More about that in a second. It's not a fight. It looks like one. It's not. If it turns into one, try to de-escalate, but it's not a fight. It's chaotic. It shouldn't be violence. The crowd, the band, the crew are not the enemy. So be prepared to adapt, kind of have your head in the game. Again, back to not being wasted. Crowd surfing happens. Don't be angry. It's somebody else's trip. They're having a good time. Your job, make sure they don't fall, especially coming into the pit. Drives me crazy, but you'll see people pointing at folks. Turn around, keep your heads up, be prepared to catch, and signal for help when you need it. And if somebody wants to get out, get them out. When somebody falls down, pick them up. To thrive in information security, again, make space, raise people up, stand up for what's right, eliminate or educate brilliant jerks, build diverse, healthy teams, build social capital for all, act in the community, and ask for help. Real quickly, some resources. Great book. Shauna Potter, lead singer for a band called War on Women. In fact, I missed one of their shows last night. I hope somebody got to go. There's a QR code. I swear it's not malicious, to a Spotify playlist. I'm going to put it up in chat. Warning, there are explicit lyrics. And just some resources. The 5 Ds that I mentioned and bystander intervention, that's out on the website Right to Be, and then a couple of other links for resources. Thanks to PancakesCon, and particularly Leslie and Clue and Jennifer for the introduction, and to all these wonderful folks for providing research and information. And if you want to get in touch with me, you can reach me at George Sandford at okaytoaskforhelp.org. And that's it.